My hands were shaking when I opened the email. I had been sitting in the departure lounge at Pearson, waiting for my connecting flight back to Vancouver after 8 months working in Dublin, and I had decided to check my property management portal out of habit. Just a routine check. The kind of thing you do when you have 4 hours to kill and too much airport coffee in your system. The listing was gone. Not just removed from the rental market. Gone. The ownership record on the BC Land Title and Survey Authority website showed a transfer date of 6 weeks ago. New owner, new name. A name I had never seen in my life. I sat there in gate 47 with 200 people chatting around me, and I could not hear a single one of them. My condo in Kitsilano. My $890,000 condo that I had spent 4 years saving for, that I had bought at 29 with a down payment I had scraped together working double shifts as a forensic accountant, that I had left in my sister's care while I was abroad, was gone. I called her immediately. She picked up on the second ring, which told me she had been expecting this call. "Hey," she said. Casual, like we were catching up over coffee. "Explain to me," I said, "why my name is not on my property anymore." There was a pause. Then she laughed. Not nervously, not guiltily. She actually laughed, the way you laugh when someone finally figures out a surprise party you planned. "I was going to tell you when you landed," she said. "The market was perfect, Claire. You were sitting on almost $1 million doing nothing. I found you a buyer. I handled everything, and your cut is sitting in my account waiting for you. You can thank me later. Your cut." I want you to understand what my sister said to me in that moment. She sold my home. She forged my signature on the transfer documents. She pocketed close to $900,000. And she used the phrase "your cut," as if she had done me a favor, as if I was the silent partner in a deal she had generously arranged on my behalf. I asked her how much. Another pause. "I had some debts," she said. "The MLM took longer to turn a profit than I expected, and I had already borrowed against my line of credit, and your place was just sitting there, Claire. You weren't even using it." I hung up. I called my mother. This was my first mistake. My mother has 2 modes when it comes to my sister: defense and aggressive defense. My sister is 4 years younger than me. She has 2 kids under 5, and as far as my mother is concerned, anything my sister does that causes problems is ultimately the fault of circumstances, bad luck, or me. This is not a new dynamic. This is the entire 32 years of my life. "She was trying to help you," my mother said, before I had even finished explaining. "She forged my signature, Mom. You were never going to sell that place on your own. You know how stubborn you are about money. She committed fraud." "Claire." My mother's voice dropped into the register she uses when she wants me to understand I am being unreasonable. "Your sister has 2 babies and a husband who hasn't worked a full year since the pandemic. She needed help. That condo was an asset. The family needed that asset. You are not the only person in this family." I remember the exact moment I stopped feeling shocked and started feeling something colder and much more useful. It was right then. My mother defending a fraud because the person who committed it had dependents. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I said, "I see," and I ended the call. I sat in that departure lounge for another 3 hours. I did not sleep. I did not eat the mediocre sandwich I had bought. I opened my laptop and I started working. Because working is the only thing I know how to do when everything else has collapsed. I am a forensic accountant. I have spent 6 years tracing hidden assets, reconstructing falsified records, and building financial cases for lawyers and regulatory bodies across 3 provinces. I do this for a living. I am apparently quite good at it. My sister had just committed the single least intelligent financial crime possible against the one person in her family who spends her professional life dismantling exactly this kind of thing. I booked a direct flight to Vancouver. I found a short-term rental in Yaletown. And then I started pulling threads. The transfer documents had gone through a notary in Burnaby. I recognized the pattern immediately: a third-party notary, not a major firm, the kind of small, independent office that processes high volumes quickly and sometimes does not ask as many questions as they should. The transfer had been executed with a forged power of attorney document, which meant someone had witnessed my signature, which meant someone else was involved. My sister cannot do this alone. She is many things, but she is not sophisticated. She sells discount wellness products to her friends on Facebook and genuinely believes the commission structure makes sense. She does not know how to forge a legal document. I thought about her husband. My brother-in-law had worked briefly in a law office as a clerk before he was let go. I had always found him slippery in a way I could not articulate at family dinners, the kind of man who quotes tax loopholes in casual conversation and thinks it makes him sound smart. I had never liked him. I had always told myself that was my bias, because he had swooped in and made my sister dependent on him within 8 months of them meeting. I pulled the notary's public registration, still active, which surprised me. Then I cross-referenced the transfer date with the notary's filings through the Law Society of BC's public records, and I found something interesting. The notary had processed 4 property transfers in a 2-week window, 3 of them in the same postal code. That is not illegal. But it is a pattern. I flagged it and kept going. The buyer had paid $847,000. Where had that money gone? I called my sister back. I was calm. I have learned, professionally, that calm gets more information than confrontation. I just want to understand the timeline, I said. Walk me through what happened. She was looser this time. Relieved, maybe, that I had not immediately gone to the police. She talked for almost 20 minutes. She told me that my brother-in-law had found the buyer through a contact, that the sale had closed quickly because the buyer was a cash purchaser, that the notary was someone my brother-in-law had used before for other transactions. I wrote that down. She told me the money had gone into a joint account she shared with my brother-in-law, that a significant portion had already been used to pay off their line of credit, a private loan from someone she referred to only as a guy Ryan knows, and the first 2 payments on a new truck my brother-in-law had purchased. How much is left? I asked. Silence. How much is left of my $847,000? It's complicated, she said. Give me a number. Another silence. Then, very quietly, maybe $60,000 out of $847,000 in 6 weeks. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment, because I think people expect rage, and the truth is more complicated than that. I felt tired. I felt the specific exhaustion of someone who has spent their entire life being the responsible one, the one who worked harder and saved more and asked for less, watching it evaporate because someone else decided my resources were communal property. And underneath the exhaustion, I felt something sharpen. Okay, I said. Thank you for telling me. Claire, I'll be in touch. I spent the next 2 weeks building a case that I would be comfortable presenting to the RCMP's Financial Crimes Unit and to the Law Society of BC. The notary, it turned out, had a previous complaint filed against him never actioned, buried in the administrative backlog related to a similar property transfer 3 years earlier. My brother-in-law had been involved in that transaction as well, listed as a family representative. I found this by cross-referencing the notary's filing history against my brother-in-law's name in publicly available court records. He had a small claims judgment against him from 2021, a former business partner. I called the former business partner, on the pretext of a background reference check, a technique I sometimes use professionally when I cannot get information any other way. Oh, Ryan, the man said, with a tone that communicated entire volumes. Yeah, I'd be very careful with Ryan. He told me about a property deal in Abbotsford that had gone sideways. Funds misrepresented, signatures that may or may not have been legitimate, a dispute that settled out of court because litigation is expensive, and the former business partner had been worn down. He had never reported it formally. I asked if he would be willing to speak to investigators if it came to that. I've been waiting for someone to ask me that for 3 years, he said. I brought everything to a lawyer, a real estate litigation specialist in downtown Vancouver, who I had worked with on a case 2 years prior. She reviewed my file for 40 minutes, and then looked at me across her desk with an expression that was somewhere between professional admiration and genuine concern. This is a strong case, she said. Fraudulent transfer, forged power of attorney, potentially a complicit notary. The question is assets. Even with a judgment, if the money is gone, not all of it is gone, I said. There's the truck, there's whatever is left in the joint account, and there's the life insurance policy my brother-in-law took out 18 months ago, listing himself as the owner on a policy nominally for their family. I want to know where the premiums are coming from. She was quiet for a moment. You've done this before. Only professionally, I said. We filed the civil claim first to establish the fraudulent transfer on record, and then my lawyer contacted the RCMP with a formal referral package. Simultaneously, she filed a complaint with the Law Society of BC against the notary. I did not tell my family any of this was happening. My mother called me twice during those 2 weeks. Once to tell me I was being cold, and that my sister was under enormous stress. Once to tell me that my father, who had been largely silent through all of this, wanted me to understand that pressing this further would damage the family permanently. The family, I said to my father, was damaged when my sister forged my signature and sold my home. You have a good income, he said. You can start over. Your sister cannot. This is the thing that I will probably spend years in therapy untangling. The assumption, so complete and so unexamined, that my resources are available to my family because I have been prudent and they have not. That responsibility is a burden I should carry silently, and that suffering consequences for recklessness is something that should be cushioned, always, by the people who chose not to be reckless. I love you, I said to my father, but what happened to me was a crime, and I am going to treat it like a crime. He did not speak to me for 3 weeks after that. The RCMP investigation moved faster than I expected, which I attribute partly to the quality of the documentation I provided, and partly to the fact that the notary, once the Law Society complaint landed, immediately began cooperating in a way that suggested he had been waiting for an exit from this arrangement for some time. He gave them my brother-in-law's name within 48 hours. My sister called me the night before the arrest. She had been tipped off somehow, probably by the notary, who had his own reasons to want people prepared, and she was not composed this time. "They're going to arrest Ryan," she said. "I know. Claire, he is the father of my children. Whatever you think he did, I know what he did," I said. "I built the file. I know every transaction, every date, every account number. I know about the Abbotsford situation. I know about the notary's previous complaint. I know that the buyer was a contact of Ryan's who has been involved in 2 other questionable transfers in the Fraser Valley. I know all of it." "Silence. You did this," she said. "Ryan did this," I said. "And you helped him, and now there are consequences." "I have babies, Claire." "I know. And I'm sorry that your children are going to go through something hard because of decisions their parents made. I am genuinely sorry about that. But you committed fraud against me. You forged my signature. You took my home. And I am not going to pretend that didn't happen because it's inconvenient for you." She hung up. My brother-in-law was arrested on a Tuesday morning. My sister was not charged initially. Her cooperation with investigators, and the evidence that my brother-in-law had been the primary architect of the scheme, meant she was treated as a secondary party. That may change as the case proceeds. Her lawyer has advised her to say nothing. The notary's license was suspended pending the Law Society investigation. The civil case is ongoing. The truck was seized as a proceeds of crime asset. The remaining balance in the joint account, just under $50,000, was frozen. It will take time, and it will probably not be the full amount. My lawyer has been honest with me about that. Title insurance covers some of it. I was fortunate that I had a good policy on that property. The gap between what I recover and what was taken is something I am trying to think of as the price of a lesson I did not ask to learn. My mother called me 2 days after the arrest. I expected anger. Instead, she was quiet for a long time, and then she said, "I didn't know about Ryan, what he actually did." "I know," I said. "I thought." She stopped. "I thought you were being difficult, the way you always are about money. The way I always am about money. This is how my family has always framed my financial carefulness, not as prudence, not as the reasonable outcome of living in one of the most expensive housing markets in the country on a salary I earned, through a profession that required years of education and certification, but as a personality flaw, a rigidity, an unwillingness to share." "Mom," I said, "I am not difficult about money. I am careful about money because I have to be, because nobody is going to hand me anything. Because the condo I bought at 29 was the result of 4 years of working 60-hour weeks and not taking vacations and eating lunch at my desk. It was not a family asset. It was mine." She was quiet. "I am not angry at you," I said, "and I meant it, but I need you to understand why I did what I did, not as me being cold or difficult, as me protecting something I built." "I understand," she said, very quietly. "I don't think you do yet," I said, "but I think you will eventually. I have moved back to Kitsilano, not to the condo that is still in legal limbo, and even when the transfer is voided, which my lawyer believes is likely given the strength of the fraud evidence, I may choose to sell it rather than return. There is a 1-bedroom on West 4th that I am renting month to month while things resolve, 2 blocks from the seawall, and every morning I walk to a coffee shop on Burrard and I sit with my laptop and I work, and I try to remember what it felt like before I knew that the people I trusted most were capable of this. My sister texted me last month, a long message, written the way people write when they have been coached by a lawyer to express remorse without admitting liability. I read it twice. I did not reply. My father came to meet me for lunch at the end of February. He paid for the meal, which for him is a significant gesture. He did not apologize directly. My father does not apologize directly. This is a fixed feature of his personality, but he told me that he had looked into what a forensic power of attorney fraud case actually entailed, legally, and that he understood I had not had another option. Coming from him, that is an apology. I told him I appreciated it. I meant that. Someone asked me recently, after I shared a version of this story privately, whether I regretted doing it. Whether putting my brother-in-law in the center of a criminal investigation, knowing my sister's kids would be affected, was worth it. I have thought about that question more than I expected to. Here is the honest answer. I do not regret protecting myself. I do not regret treating a crime like a crime. I do regret that my niece and nephew, who are 4 and 2 and have no part in any of this, are growing up in a household that is now under legal and financial siege. That grief is real, and I carry it. But I also know this. If I had stayed quiet, if I had absorbed this loss because pursuing it would have been hard for my family, I would have confirmed for everyone involved that my resources are available for redistribution whenever someone else runs out. I would have taught my sister that consequences are negotiable if the victim can afford the loss. I would have taught myself that my work, My savings, my choices, all of it mean less than keeping the peace. I am not willing to teach anyone that lesson. The condo is not the point. The condo is just the form the lesson took this time. I built something, someone took it, and I went and got it back. That is the whole story.